Hey, welcome to Can We Play Already? Tonight, it may look like we are ready for another game of Heroes of Valto's Crossing, but we're actually going to do a little bit of a deep dive into how the campaign went, specifically how it was running a hard mode campaign. We've got some of the players here. We've also got our producer, Ben, here. I'll let everyone introduce themselves in a second, but thanks for joining us. And yeah, we're excited just to low-key chat with you a bit tonight instead of all the regular action adventure. Yeah, Jace, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, viewers. I am Jace. I play Tengil, and I'm super excited to be here talking about this.
Woo! I'm Brianna. I usually play Kanaima, our rogue. And, you don't have to hear me talk like this the entire episode this time.
We still get to.
We'll miss it. We will miss it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm John. I play Welltide, and I'm also excited to talk about the campaign, D&D hard mode rules and stuff.
Yeah. And hi, I'm not Andrew. Josh is unable to be here today, but my name is Ben, and I am usually behind the scenes producing the show, but now I will tonight be in front of the scenes producing the show for you. Woo. So if you see me looking over here a lot, that's probably because I'm looking at the screen.
We told you how beautiful he was. Yeah. We weren't lying.
See? Proof is now here.
Now we've got a nice pink and blue thing going.
Yeah, you two look fabulous.
So this is it. We're here and I'm talking. You don't just hear me in the background.
Woo!
And so if you're on the chat, hello, Oblivion601, hello. Oblivion says that they've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since 1977.
Whoa! That's amazing.
Yeah, total old school players. So thanks for joining us tonight, and we're going to talk about 5th edition, but specifically these are actually homebrew rules that Julien has implemented into this campaign, so that we could kind of experience a slightly amped up version of the current edition, wanting to do hard mode. And we talked about that actually on another DM panel chat show.
We had a pre-campaign talk. We're having a post-campaign talk to see where our thoughts line up.
And we get the real-life experience players who got to participate in it to give us their perspective on what they liked about the rules. So let's talk about what the rules and things that we did were maybe, and that'll probably devolve into different stories about the campaign, I'm sure, which will be fun. You can watch all this on our YouTube channel.
Woo! Can We Play Already's on YouTube too. Yeah. And you can also catch all the episodes this season, which were really fun to make. I want to ask, especially for the players, what is your favorite homebrew rules that we use, and which ones maybe didn't make as much of a difference, or you just didn't feel helped as much or got in the way. I'm going to do a quick recap of kind of how many we use and what they are. I will try not to take too long with this. I remember I wanted to use even more stuff that we really didn't even get to still. So it's kind of interesting. Okay. I know one thing we tried to do was separate skills from the ability scores. So we tried to use skills in unique ways, not dependent on not every time you make a intimidation check is going to use charisma, for example. We tried to mix that up. We had some rules about inventory slots were very big, how much you could carry, how much was going to encumber you. I know those came up quite a bit. Do
you want to just pause on any of these and just talk about them as we go? We might as well just dive into it. Inventory slots was a fun one that we had experienced. Does anyone have, outside of video games most commonly, does anyone have experience or?
We'd used inventory slots once before in another campaign that we did. It wasn't as concrete as this with the rules, and this one felt a lot better. I think it made a lot of importance in during character creation, what stuff you started with. I noticed the 3 other characters were completely packed, no space left, and I purposely packed because I was I don't need a ton. So then whenever there's treasure situations or who's going to hold on to this thing, it was nice to be able to be I've got space, because then I feel I've got control of this magic artifact or whatever thing that we might be selling or whatever. It was just a nice little perk to be able to have the space and be the one who can grab it.
One of the main things I think about the hard mode rules in general was that we're experiencing kind of the hand wave stuff and taking it seriously, like encumberment and space in your backpack.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because it will cascade from there. My next question was, how did we handle starting equipment? You know, don't have to just use the standard starting set at that point. What do you do with your explorer's pack?
We kind of found more like use in not using that sometimes.
Yeah, I went really nitty gritty during character creation, and I discovered that the like explorer adventure pack, all those kind of things, are a scam. They like, if you buy those things individually, you'll be saving like a couple gold.
Yeah. Well, they're there because you get them free in character creation if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they take up less space if you buy them in the explorer's pack or
I'm
like
not
in
sure
the
if
pack.
that was like a weird thing
Which
that
is
our
weird.
homebrew rules
Yeah.
missed and like maybe got inaccurate or something like that.
Because the pack itself takes up a certain amount of spaces, but if you buy all those
Yeah.
items individually, they take up way more
it
space.
seemed like it would too. So I
It's like if
kind
you
of-
buy 10 torches, like
Yeah.
right? Like that
No, it's
takes
very
up
true.
way more slots than it would in the explorer's pack.
They definitely rounded that kind of down. I remember, the default rules for encumberment too are very lax. It's I think 15 times your strength modifier or something like that, or something crazy. Yeah, 15 times your strength modifier. So with even like 10 strength, which is like not putting any points into it at all, you can just carry 150 pounds of gear without penalty, which is like quite a lot. And I've like looked at it and even like statted out some like heavy armor characters, and it's hard to get a starting character over 100 pounds of inventory. Like it's hard to get past that mark. So like having 150, I just picture these like heroes with giant backpacks and all these tools sticking off, trying to fight with them on too. Like,
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, the game is so like imagination based or whatever. Like if you try to actually put your like a vision to these like the systems or whatever, it's bad to like have it this way. And also mechanically, like you have things like a bag of holding or whatever. So like if those
So much more useful.
right? Yeah. And I mean it's like kind of absurd to hand wave those things when like items exist so that you can hand wave them. So yeah, like that's something I think I would use in every campaign going forward, like as a player or a DM.
Really?
Yeah, I would just because it makes sense. Like I don't know, it made us think about things and like it added to the immersion a lot.
I've never used it before, so I've never used encumberment.
I think this kind of brings up something that we talked about where hard mode rules sort of fall into with a natural groove towards maybe lower magic settings as opposed to higher magic where, bags of holding are willy-nilly thrown about, whereas, you almost feel like you have to scale back the powerful items available to you. I'm wondering if Julien had a thought about that.
I I love these rules, and I would use them in any campaign, even high magic ones, because like to me the element they add is not just like the challenge of hey, I can only hold this much stuff. So when we're getting treasure, like oh, there is this beautiful painting that's worth like 50 gold, but can any of us carry a painting home? Like it's kind of like that kind of stuff's really nice to think about realistically. It gives me a little like I don't know. I like watching people like kind of try and figure that crap out and see what to leave behind, but also. I just like knowing where stuff's stored on my character. Like the way I play, like I'm always thinking about how I'm using my free action to like what I'm drawing, what weapons I'm using, what I'm holding when, where I'm taking it, and like
that's another great way to emphasize your visual style and like how you're engaging in the role playing aspects of it. Where the DM or who even the characters play PCs can be put on this responsibility to really give us the sense of what are you doing? What is your character doing? And just being a bit more engaged in the reality that you're creating together.
I'm very like when I'm a player too, like I'm rarely like, oh, I just cast this and then I hit him with this thing. Like I am always thinking about like, okay, am I holding like my magic implement right now? And if I'm casting a spell and it has material components, like I will mention that I'm using like an orb or an amulet or something too, because I find that just adds cool color. Same with like, I remember I had a really cool moment. It was just like this one-off thing in a battle in my other game where like my character had a spear and like chucked it at one of the like zombies and then like drew out a warhammer afterwards on her next turn and her shield, and like that change in kind of like how she gets ready for battle and what she does first and then what she does second just made it kind of like interesting. I don't know.
Definitely like brings some more flavor into it, and like even just going back on like the item capacity thing, like just kind of like in other campaigns, like, yeah, we could become encumbered, but like, as you were saying, like, being able to carry like 150 pounds or more just like makes it like not really like much of an issue. And I think one of the things, Julien, that you were kind of mentioning when we were like playing was like not everyone needs to like carry all of their wealth with them all at once. Like realistically, like even like, you know, in real life, like I guess we've got like digital currency that we can carry, but we're not necessarily carrying like everything.
Even if you didn't, you wouldn't carry your entire life savings with you everywhere, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
You guys don't do that? Shit.
You put it under the mattress where it belongs.
Yeah, exactly.
Oblivion 601 says always take gems and jewelry before the coins.
Yeah, because I was
100%.
kind of giving the option sometimes. Like I would present like, oh, these are like a bunch of gems that like take up one slot, and then there's like 300 coins, and that's 3 slots. And I was like kind of seeing what you would pick and like seeing what it was. So I noticed that kind of focus too. Like leaving 100 silver behind is fine if it means you can take another like 50 gold piece chalice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
One more note on the inventory thing. So Julie and I discussed at one point in the past like the different types of players or whatever, and like what they enjoy in the game. And you know, there's like people who enjoy the role playing, people who enjoy the like mechanical, like kind of video gamey side of it almost. And then there's people who are like simulationalists who really enjoy the like, you know, being immersed and like getting into those details about like, oh, you have to like drink water this many times a day and like the inventory stuff or whatever. And so I know we're discussing this in light of the like whole hard rules campaign, but I hesitate to even call this like a difficulty adjustment. I think it's like a simulation adjustment.
And the narrative, like it's like there's when you were mentioning the different types of players, there's something for everyone in that kind of system. Like having meaningful narrative meaningful inventory brings out narrative, brings out simulationalists, and it brings out like the kind of gamey people too. Like I think it's just totally beneficial.
Yeah, it's I think rather than call it like a difficulty scale, I would call it like an immersion scale. It's like the difference between someone casually jumping in versus someone who's like, I am here to be in this world and play this character.
Yeah, I think I'd say that too, really, yeah. Like, because they didn't feel, like, super hard. I imagine if we, like, went into it very chaotic, like, it probably would have been a lot harder. But, like, as long as you're with, like, a crew that's keeping themselves kind of, like, organized and, like, meaningful in terms of their interactions, it's not, like, the difficulty isn't, like, huge. At least for, like, a lot of the aspects that I found that interacted
keeping
with,
track of like the rations and water wasn't like a crazy big deal. Like I almost didn't like notice it a lot. I think the hardest thing to keep track of was like every time we slept, like it went down like 2 and then up 1 and the next day and we're just
I'm
like,
looking at refining those for sure.
because it's like I ate like at night and then it's like we sleep and then like I mean, nothing generally happens while we're, like, sleeping. So then you wake up the next morning and it immediately, like, changes again. And you're just like, what? Okay. Yeah. So it's just, like, a lot of erasing and, like... Yeah. That was the only time that I was like...
One other thing... I like actually just made me think of something that I would add to make it more difficult. I'm screaming, aren't I? All right. So, is... make more situations where the like hunger and the sleep and all that kind of stuff decreases. And like, you know, in that situation where we were in the volcano and I was like ferrying people across the lava because we didn't have a good way across or whatever. I didn't want to say it in that moment because I was like, I don't want to be exhausted for the boss fight that I know is coming up. But like, I was thinking in my head, I was like, I should lose like an exhaustion per person I carry across the lava.
Or at least maybe make like a constitution check more often.
Yeah.
So that does exist in the rules, and I didn't end up using it a lot just because, I mean, we were fitting stuff into like 2.5 hour games and I was juggling a lot already. But there are rules for like, calling for constitution checks if you make a difficult journey, if you try some physical activity, and then if they fail, you can
high jumping challenge, you know.
Well, I mean, like outside of like long resting and stuff, obviously. But like if you have something arduous in the wild like that, like you can tax like thirst, hunger, or fatigue, or just like let them make a con save and tax it if they fail. You know, whoever fails this con save takes a fatigue from this long journey.
Yeah.
Just thinking about like the thought of like one thing that was like a little bit tedious with it was like switching pages. So like be like, all right, rations, hunger, thirst. something that might make something like that, like going forward a little bit easier, is like maybe just do it with like game pieces.
Yeah.
Like having just like a
Oh,
little
yeah,
like,
yeah.
here's your amount that like it goes down, and like here's the rations that you need to like spend, and then you can just
Yeah.
write it down at the end of the session. So you're only really changing on the page once, and then
Even just like
otherwise-
using like a cue card or something that's
Yeah.
like separate that you can just kind of
Keep
have
track.
at all times might be
Yeah.
nicer.
I'd like to point out that Kanaima would never get exhausted in a jumping competition.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
He's the greatest jumper in all the land. Now that he's beat that nobleman.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at jumping though.
Like maybe into lava.
Yeah.
We had a few other things that relate to this. So, like, while we're on the topic of the survival stuff, it might be good to talk about. There were rules we used for making camp, where you could tell stories and stuff or do performances. There was rules for long rests were a big change, making them a week long and incorporating downtime activities into our long rests. I think those are the two basic ones I play with that.
There's how did we deal with short rest? Was it still an hour for
We
us?
still did hour for short rest, but if you made camp for the night, there were some benefits you could do, like giving each other inspiration by either, like literally some of the things you could wander off in solitude, maybe get inspiration because of you're alone with your thoughts and you got some quiet time, or like telling a good story and someone like rolling to see who was most inspired by it, and then they get inspiration for the next day.
I think rather than rolling, I liked when it actually made character sense or whatever.
I like that
Yeah.
too, and I'm fine with that. There's also some rules we didn't use about like cooks utensils and stuff and brewing kits where you can like kind of help people heal in short rest a little more by cooking if you're willing to put a little gold into it.
Cool idea.
So we haven't quite got that. Andrew wants to get, like Josh wants to get a set of brewer's supplies for Andrew so that they can start doing
You
that.
get
That would
trash.
be fun.
But anyways, we also had yeah,
Kanaima
really.
can get sh-
I imagine Kanaima's a big drinker. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, and he's gonna
There you
be
go, some
hitting
custom
on
brews
our-
every night.
Yeah.
Who knows, it might be dangerous.
We also have so we had the long rests were a big change. What did you think of that? They're like, this is one of my favorite changes in D&D I've ever made. So I mean, like, I don't take offense if
Yeah, it was in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah.
One of the hard mode
This one's
suggestions
taken right
in
from them,
particular.
yeah.
But I like the addition specifically to the short rest. Think that you can still do the hour and kind of keep the game flowing.
but you get a benefit if you're
But if
making
you
camp.
get a little extra cute boon, and you did have some like good cues for
Yeah,
that. So
I think it's to make up for the fact too that like that 8-hour camp rest would be like so beneficial in the base rules because a long rest is so short. So like now that you don't have the opportunity, it's like a good reason to still sleep at night
Yeah.
and still worry about threats and stuff. And
Yeah, I actually even just the short rests stuff, like adding those boons, like even just before getting into the long rest stuff, like I really liked that for like our campaign. It was really interesting. There's just like a lot of like cool like cue moments of just like simple interactions between our characters, and I feel like that was like where like a lot of fun character building was happening. Like Tango like teaching the party about some of the constellations and the
Yeah.
stars, and like even when we were like on our journey and walking and everybody was talking about, and this was one that you like
yeah, I
you
mean
put
the
in for
random
us.
encounter of
Yeah,
the
the random
coins.
one.
Or
Yeah,
the,
just,
what
like-
do you do with million gold?
Yeah, and like all of our characters had like a different thing that they would want to do with it, and it like really fell in line with like their like those characters.
it really gave you a chance to flesh out who you were as characters, which is great for getting people into their game.
Yeah, and like the main reason I wanted to talk about that short rest stuff is that like I feel like that just extends and is amplified by this week-long long rest, and it makes
Yeah.
it feel so meaningful. And it's not like, it also like the whole idea of like your resources, like losing your resources, like you have to be very careful and more meaningful with that. So like that's where some of the difficulty can kind of come in, because we're not just going to recover all of our spell slots if we're casters super easily, or
Yeah.
like all of our hit dice. If we spend ourselves and spread ourselves too thin before we get to that boss, like that battle is not going to go well. So yeah, and with the time sensitive thing, it's like, oh, if we need a long rest, it needs to be a week. So like, are we prepared to wait a week for something to happen in the world if we're trying to race against time?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really
Meaningful
like that.
choices in games,
Yeah.
making them fun.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
like exactly. It makes it feel more like you're characters in this world and less like you're playing a video game. Which like I like that, like disconnecting from the video gamey aspects and like more into the storytelling.
Because I find in the regular, like any of like the like non-hard mode campaigns that I've played, with the long rest being like 8 hours, it's sort of just like you don't do anything. Like you're just like, okay, we're gonna long rest, and it's just like cut to black, and then we all wake up in the morning and we're perfectly fine. Like,
and those are such
you
good like
get nothing out of it.
moments,
Like the week-long long rest like and introduces like stuff that we can do without like consequence, because like it's already established that we are resting. Like
you're safe.
We're safe. We're in a town. Like we're there for a week. We're just like, this is downtime, so you can just go and do things without like the consequence of like, oh no, like we're asleep at night. Like what if something shows up and like whatever, you know?
There's a social contract with our long rest. And, like, I'm not gonna pull it over on you and ruin your long rest by like on day
they're
6
so
having
useful.
a demon
They're
appear.
so important. So,
But, you know, then again, in the actual rules, you can have a random encounter and experience an interruption in your long rest, you know? Who like...
yeah.
There's just, but I do like that the prompt in this case was to use the underused downtime rules that do exist and kind of integrate them a little bit more naturally into the actual campaign, as opposed to more commonly only outside of actually doing anything important.
Downtime's got a lot of cool things, and like over time, like I think what I might look at introducing in our new season too is like training new skills and new proficiencies too.
Yeah.
Cool.
It might take like, you know, doing it for like several weeks of downtime, so it might take like a season to get a new skill, but if it's something you want to commit to, you know, that's possible too. I was interested too, and this is I guess for all of you, but for Jason, Jonathan as spellcasters, this is part of the week-long long rest is like really to even out the martial spellcasting balance of D&D 5th edition, which is horrendous to me, because I mean like most games end up where you're doing only 2 or 3 combats a day. So as spellcasters, how did you feel about it? And for you, Brianna, as like, did you feel like, you know, you were playing a martial character and actually not significantly weaker than all the spellcasters for once, or like feel a little more useful or a little more like central to the party? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a lot more, I guess, confident in like my ability to put myself in between like that like enemies and
Squishies.
like like put myself in between like the things that are trying to kill us and like my party members, and I was like, it's fine because I don't have spell slots.
Yeah,
like,
you don't have resources to waste here.
I'm gonna get hit, but I got 2 swords, so I'm just gonna keep fighting the thing. Like I'm not gonna run out.
Yeah.
So I like that, because it like with the whole party of spellcasters, like it made me feel like, okay, like I have a job to do, which is like not let them die.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so, and like I know that like I can go a long time without doing a long rest as long as I'm not dying.
Yeah, like you can keep the party safe still.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's this like image that there might be like 1 or 2 spellcasters in the group, but like we had 3 spellcasters to 1 martial. And that is the game of Dungeons & Dragons, because 8 of the classes are spellcasters, and then 2 of the martials have spellcasting paths.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to have like a 1-to-3 ratio most of the time. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Do you feel too underpowered?
Actually, so there's a lot of interesting things with like the caster rules that like overall I would say that like I actually like the changes to casters. Going into it as like, oh no, casting is going to be so difficult now. Like when I was thinking about the rules conceptually, I was like, oh, it's going to be hard to like cast. Like, am I going to be underpowered? As well as like the whole like spell burnout thing. I was like, ooh, this is going to be like pretty tricky. But you know, having played like a wild magic sorcerer in like a regular campaign, which already has that like randomness like effect aspect to it, it wasn't like too unfamiliar.
Okay, I like that.
But then like actually doing it like like interacting with the mechanics, it's actually more fun than it like appears on the outset. Like
Wild magic for everyone, all the time.
Yeah, essentially that's what it is.
Yeah, it's like everyone has wild magic, and you're not doing as many like random effects, but like draining a little bit of health or not burning a spell slot, like that kind of stuff happening. Like that's kind of cool, and just like everything, like your spell casting just feels a little bit more meaningful now. So like it's more impactful when I'm like, okay, I'm going to cast this first level or second level thing.
Yeah, you're like, I can't do this a million times,
like,
and then just
careful.
long rest when I've done them after every combat.
Yeah, so it's just like having to ration that out, and then like certain spells like losing a little bit of their potency because of the rules as well. Like I had prepared like Goodberry originally, and I was like, this spell's gonna do so much, and then like realized like, oh, like the hard rules like actually changed it a little bit,
so it's
like less
not as
useful.
crazy.
But like I'm okay with that. Like there's like some good trade-offs, and I actually really enjoyed like rolling spell burnout. Like I was calling out the spell burnout a lot because it was just like a thing I wanted to like be mindful of, but it's also just used to
I really liked
doing
it too.
that.
And I think combined with like the long rest 8 hour or the week-long long rest rule, it's like I wouldn't use burnout in a normal campaign if you're not changing your rest, because if you're casting like 6 to 10 spells a day with every character, I think burnout's going to get too much. But since like you do roll it on cantrips, but the rules where you don't get negative side effects on cantrips, only if you roll low on actual first or higher level spells. So that's like 6 or 8 per 2 games maybe sometimes with our with our long rest. So
like we never got down to like a D6, I don't think.
I was down to a D6.
Okay.
yeah, you did actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, they like, so the way it works too, since it always says 1s or 2s, but you're rolling higher dice, like it happens very gradually, but then suddenly, because once you go down to like a D8, you're now like really likely to go down again and again and again.
Yeah.
So like, when you're sitting at the D12, you're sitting pretty and you're fine, but like as soon as you go down a couple times, it's going to get more and more likely that you keep going.
That was also why I picked the swashbuckler, because I was just like, if I'm using swords and I have no ranged weapons, I don't have to roll for ammo either. I was like, I am just going to consistently walk up to things and slash at them and poke them with a sword.
And I've had flying things, I've had all manner, and you're still figuring out ways to kill them.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
How did you guys feel about not being able to just spam cantrips then? Like, did that change your choices in which cantrips you took?
100%.
And did you have to have backup plans for physical traits that you might not have invested in, say, strength or dex as much for?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of answer that with a bit of the previous question too. So I did take a slingshot, which only came up like once.
But it came up.
It came up though, but yeah, so like going through the cantrips or whatever, a lot of the time with cantrips, like you don't need multiple damage ones because you just like pick the best one, and that's Firebolt or Eldritch Blast. And then I had a Sacred Flame as a backup because I was like, whatever, it gets around things that were behind cover and that kind of stuff. And it's like radiant damage versus fire damage or whatever. So I had those two. But I rarely would use the Sacred Flame because Firebolt was just better in almost every circumstance. Only time it wasn't when we were fighting a fire elemental, and that was like the time when I was like, well, I'm not going to use Sacred Flame either because it's a saving throw that thing is good at. So I was like, I guess I use my slingshot. But then I was like, okay, it's a D4. I'm like 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage. And that only exacerbated so now to jump back to the previous question, I felt way underpowered. Even though I was like a cool sorcerer, I really love my character, I've been like loving this campaign, I felt like there was so many times where I'm like, I wish I could be casting a spell. I don't play casters in like all my other campaigns, so this was kind of like new. And I was like wanting that fantasy that I see other casters do where they're just like pew, 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 whatever. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. Like, so there was so many games where like I'd be like, okay, I can't, we got a boss fight coming up and probably like 2 more combats before that or something like that. So like can't use any of my spell slots. I've only got like, 2 level 2s and like 3 level 1s or whatever, And I was like, I guess I'll use a cantrip, and it would be like, okay, Firebolt, and it's like I deal 1 damage because it's just like a D10, and I could roll a 1, and then I'm like, well, that sucks.
I mean, you could always roll a 1. but
Of course, yeah. But like, I mean, a lot of other things will be like multiple dice or whatever.
Yeah,
Like, especially like sitting next to Kanaima, like I roll, like I do, my firebolt is basically my auto attack, and it's like I deal 1 damage, and then like Brianna will be like, oh, okay, here I'll like attack, and I get this sneak attack, and then I have a second attack,
But
and
that
like
is
you
a
know the
trade-off.
damage potential there is like
Yeah.
38 or something.
Well,
silly.
Yeah, it's-
And
So
like
that's
you would be
wild.
like averaging about like 16 to 20 damage a turn,
Yeah.
and I would be like 1 to 10 at like most of the time it was lower.
Well, that's the misconception of casters too. Casters in D&D 5th edition are generally not the highest single target damage creatures, like or classes. That's rogues and rangers, or like fighters probably more so. Even paladins are pretty good at that. But for sorcerers and wizards, like you really are an AOE damage kind of mage, which I know you didn't have a lot of, or didn't like. We had a lot of solo battles too. So that may have just been disproportionate. Like there weren't a lot of group mobs to kind of flex your muscles at. But yeah, it is tough because like magic is purposefully like no mods are added to your damage. It's random chaotic magic. So your damage is like less reliable, and you're sitting beside someone who has very reliable damage all the time. And that's, it can be tough. But I liked it narratively because like I like Tangle is like kind of this Gandalf vibe of like, it made the casters, even though you're willing to use your magic, like less ready to all the time. Like it kind of almost added a weight to magic in the narrative because there's a weight mechanically to like wasting your spell slots. And it felt like maybe like, oh yeah, no, you shouldn't just like use magic constantly. It is tricky, it is chaotic, it is dangerous.
I would say as well though, like, so maybe like as Tangle, because as a player, like you hadn't played casters and you saw this pew and then you went to do it and you're like, it's not as blasty as I was like expecting. But like, as another player watching Tangle do things, like when you did like do a meaningful spell, like it was that much cooler. And like as someone who plays casters, I actually enjoyed the limits a little bit more because like I felt more weight to the spells that I were casting that like landed better. So there was some stuff that would like, kind of fizzle, but other things where I was just like, whoa, that thing did really well. And we get to do like cool utility things that like
the
other
utility
people can't.
spells actually felt better than the damage ones most of the time, like using sleep on like all of those like sand soldiers, that probably
powerful.
Won us
Or the
like in a
thunder
subtle way. One
that was great.
Thunder was great.
Or the wind. The ball
That's
of
the
wind.
ball of wind that
was
put out the
dope.
fire elemental.
That
So
was
the utility
great,
spells
yeah.
were like the most exciting and like coolest moments.
Yeah. Those are like all my
I call sleep a
memorable
control spell.
That's a
really.
control spell,
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But control
it's
and
still
utility
useful
are big.
tactical.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. You're not gonna like. That's part of the advantage of playing a spellcaster too. Is like you get so much utility that a lot of classes just don't get access to.
For sure, yeah. So then now jumping back to the previous thing about the long rest, I've like been thinking about like a way to maybe kind of like find somewhat of a middle ground, and we talked about having a short rest can be like, sit down and catch your breath for an hour or something like that, or also like a single like a night's sleep. I was thinking maybe like making a distinction, like adding in like a medium rest or something like that, like call it whatever we want. And then maybe like on a medium rest, you only regain like 1 spell slot or something like that.
See, you might like other spellcasters because so Circle of the Land Druid gets this, all wizards get it, and they both get to basically once per long rest. During a short rest, they can recover a bunch of spell slots. And then you might also just like warlocks better because they operate. It's very limited. You usually have something like 2 spell slots or maybe 3 until higher levels, but they recover on short rests.
They all
So
cast at a high level.
Yeah, they all cast at the same level too. So you'll like, if you're like, I don't know what it is exactly, but if you're a level 5 warlock, you might have like 3 level 3 spell slots, and that's it. And you can use them for lower spells too, but they always upcast automatically if you want, which is great. So it makes sure all your spells are super potent. And if you don't have time for short rest, it can be really difficult because like you have to be like, I have 3 spells.
Yeah.
But
That's why they have the best damage
good.
cantrip in the game, because
Yeah.
they just spam the cantrip, and then they have like 3 maybe utilities, maybe they hex.
Right.
so you might like you literally are playing one of the few classes that doesn't have access to, like sorcerers trade that recovery for meta magic where you can create more spell slots.
There's that.
Yeah, that also is like super
Came in
limited,
useful.
and like most, it came in. It was handy a few times, but like most of the episodes so far, like I only have 3 points, and like the meta magic I took, like Quicken Spell or like
Well, now you have 5.
the other one or whatever. Yeah, like some of the abilities to use were like 3 points, so it would be like, okay, I'm just saving this for the boss fight. Like it basically doesn't exist until the boss fight, and same with like one of the level 2 spell slots or whatever,
Sometimes you might want to just turn it into a spell slot instead of using the sorcery stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it's tough to get the footing of like playing a new class too. I know this is like a really new thing for you too, so I'm sure you'll like find a little groove with it. Especially like I think level 5 we're gonna have a lot more fun because the challenge is gonna step up because the power steps up at level 5 pretty dramatically.
Oh yeah.
So you're all gonna feel a little bit better, I think.
Having that like nice preview fight at the end of the last
that was good,
episode
yeah.
was cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I'm
got
waiting.
a glimpse into everybody's like new powers. Like everybody did something flashy.
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see like I don't know, your first fireball spell go off and see you like roll all those damage dice and how happy you look.
I wanted to do it on the zombies, but
No, it's fine.
yeah.
There's better options for it.
Andrew was
in the
there,
middle of it,
and Andrew's
yeah.
been burned enough.
Oh God, no. Man,
So yeah, that's some.
That was something I really liked about your one of your DM advices was actually how you give players some new ability, set them up with an encounter so they get to experience that.
Yeah,
that's good.
it was really fun to see.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone gets to try out their new thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not another boss fight or something. It's like
Still tax some resources.
try some stuff out.
Yeah.
And we had the luck of it just being like thematically and mechanically a very lucky fight where a lot
Yeah.
of things hit. Like you even recovered a spell slot.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
with burnout magic. So like things were just looking really good and going really well. And I think it was just like a good like moment for that.
Yeah.
Speaking of like campaign worlds, hard mode, survival, extra stuff, Oblivion 601 commented that back in the day they had the weather charts for the different months, and then having like heavy rainstorms or blizzards in the mountains, and having that like affect the players as well was a thing. And DMs would pre-gen that and really build out the weather cycles. If you're a cool adventurer, adventuring over many a year, perhaps, why not be thinking about all these
Something really
different effects that
simple
can
to put in
do?
too.
Yeah, I definitely like that kind of stuff too. Like,
Yeah.
thinking like if you're wearing like plate mail and it's pouring rain or something like that, like it's not going to go well. Yeah, like, or even just like weighing you down, like making, I don't know, you travel slower or like it's difficult to rain.
Yeah, weather
because of
can
mud or
affect
whatever,
like how easy it is to navigate. It can affect how easy it is to forage. It can affect like travel speed if it's bad enough. And like coming up with like a really quick like seasonal like 4 rolling tables for like 5 different weather effects you might have, and like have like snow be really common in the winter but non-existent in summer or whatever.
No, it's just a bad day.
Yeah, I actually
Like, if you are wearing plate mail and you get knocked off of your horse into the deepest river in the world, Jamie
fuck,
Lannister.
that episode sucks so much.
I definitely don't use weather enough. I love weather.
Yeah,
We're in a desert. It's kind of it's a
Yeah.
little same.
But
It's
like,
a little
I
samey.
could do more with like sandstorms and
Yeah.
different like monsoon season and stuff like that. Like I did look up like kind of, it's like I wanted to be realistic, and like a big misconception about deserts is that they're very like completely devoid of life, and like deserts have a ton of biodiversity, and they also have like really interesting seasons where like they do have these hot arid dry seasons, but then like monsoon season is something I'm looking to throw in eventually because like that is just part of the world.
We're just playing
Absolutely,
Jumanji now.
Yeah.
oh my god, I
Right
wish.
now the world is like really like,
Yeah.
where's the water going kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
So like
Yeah.
throwing in a monsoon suddenly might be like an interesting twist of like what is happening.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of magical religious
that
meaning
would
does
fit
it have?
into
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll see if you get that
gem.
gem back into the right slot. And,
yeah.
I can't say anything about these gems, and I'm so frustrated at it. Let's not even bring them up. Every plan I hear, I'm just like, oh, I want to comment on it, but I'm like, oh, don't ruin it.
on the weather thing too, like even with in the desert, I think some extra difficulty that you could have added. I don't know if the rules that you were using like had stuff set up for this already, but like I'm thinking of Breath of the Wild, how like it was like like incredible heat or whatever, and you needed specific clothing to be able to deal with
some
it.
temperature rules
or
in this
whatever.
homebrew set.
So yeah, like I don't know, temperature, or like maybe even like it burns your feet or something like that. Maybe like bandits steal our shoes or I don't know. Like there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with it to like really make it like.
Basically, the way it works is like you have a little bit of a survival track for temperature, and I can say what the temperature outside is, and your clothing choices might like alleviate that or worsen it. So like, but it was a little like I was worried about too much, so I left it out. But it might be something I introduce in season 2 if we're like refining these and making them a little more solid.
It's also a little bit difficult because we're streaming. I feel like if it was a game off camera, I would want like every simulation list like go as deep as we can, make it like super like make it really fucking brutal and nitty gritty, and like but because we're on camera, I'm like I don't want to like take up people's time, you know?
Doing your paperwork.
Well,
yeah, like even when we were doing like food and water and stuff, I was very conscious of like, oh, everyone, the audience is just watching us like, oh, how much water, you know?
That's actually
like,
part of
you know?
why I think like the game pieces might make that part like a little bit faster.
Maybe
like,
there's something we can do for that.
Because like imagine if we just all had like a thing where like it'd be way faster than us just being.
There's
like,
definitely a conversation about how to design games around flow and around, say, for streaming, because obviously this is a slightly different context for Dungeons and Dragons. Like we like to think, we're giving a good example of what Dungeons and Dragons can be, but at the same time, there is a slight consideration from time to time, and you can kind of hide that, though, depending on how you design things.
Yeah, like designing it to be more simple or more like an automatic process kind of could be good. I think a lot of the stuff we've done on streaming that's unique to streaming, like I'd like my home games to run like this. Like I love the flow of our games, and I think like, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to add more stuff to a home game just because like I think everyone's time is still valuable, and I still want to have a game that's not too long, that is full of adventure, that we all come away from loving and like being excited for the next one for. Like I like I don't know. This taught me a lot that I'm going to use off stream too.
I would definitely say we want to see all these things that you're doing implemented regularly, because they're all really fun in their own ways, and I think everybody's enjoyed them. Speaking of flow, running combat is something that's very maybe even contentious in the Dungeons and Dragons community about flow and the way it works, and we used an interesting different
that's
initiative
the last thing
system,
I want to, well, actually one of the few things
which
I want to talk about.
I really did think added to the overall flow of combat and giving narrative opportunities to make it meaningful.
Yeah, on the flow of combat and all that, just in general, I don't know if it was this group or because we were on stream and we were trying to be conscious of time or whatever, but I've definitely been in games where people are like pretty much checked out on their phone, and then like it's their turn. It's like, well, I attack, roll, blah, whatever, yeah. But like in this one, everyone was very engaged and like all present and whatnot, so that made it so much more exciting and like made me be able to like get into it more. But then on the initiative thing, that's probably what I was like at the beginning of this episode, or like tonight, thinking like this is my favorite point. It's a minor one, but using intelligence as your initiative bonus instead of dex is probably my favorite change, just because it makes so much sense to me in like, how the situation would play out. Like your dexterity and your like, nimbleness or like whatever isn't going to determine how fast you necessarily are. Like intelligence is being able to like read the room and like be like, this person's like getting furious or whatever, like they're probably going to turn on us, or the intelligence to like keep an eye on your like other like exits or entrances or whatever, to like see if someone's like going to sneak in and attack you, or like hearing things or being just like anything. Like intelligence is totally what is going to determine who is ready for battle when it breaks out, not dexterity.
I think even wisdom would make a good role as well for that.
Yeah, wisdom would make sense.
It worked in my favor. I also added charisma to mine because I was a swashbuckler, which was
So the reason that this set of rules suggested intelligence is because dexterity is like the most used stat in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Like it's used for AC, it's used for the majority of your saving throws. It's definitely one of the most important. It's used for all your range attacks and some of your weapon attacks and melee too. Dexterity does a lot of work. And it's really like with the default rules, I think a little overpowered. And intelligence is definitely the least used stat in the entire game.
Yeah, because
it's
basically
just
wizards use it.
yeah, that's essentially it.
Then like some of the abilities are tied.
So
to
they
it.
wanted to tie it to language learning, which I thought was kind of cool for character creation, and they wanted to tie it to initiative to give it some oomph.
Yeah.
I like that change coming from the other side of the screen. I didn't really even pick up on that as one of the main initiative rules. The thing that really got me about it was
We haven't even talked about the main part of it.
the actual, like, you know, who gets to go next on the turn. And there's a whole mechanical thing to that, which we can kind of get into. But, you know, even just changing the rules to make it easy for it to be wisdom or dex or intelligence. Given the scenario, that you might even call for a charisma initiative roll.
Yeah, maybe it just
right?
depends on the actual situation.
Right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's only the starting point to jump off from. So how important is it really, you know, I like the idea of taking some importance away from dexterity, but in this rule set, which is the super exciting part, is that was just who goes first. And that's all that really
Matter
mattered.
after that, yeah.
So we had, the way it works is, everyone rolls intelligence. Instead of me making a list of everyone's initiative, which honestly, as a DM, was the best thing ever. I didn't have to do any more like 20 and 15 and 12 like
that's
lists like that.
right.
I didn't have to ask everyone. I just was like, who rolled highest? I got an 18. Anyone beat it? And Kanaima would be like, yeah, I got 28 million because I'm a rogue and I'm a swashbuckler.
I got like 40 on my initiative.
Once you know who goes first, if you choose who goes next from the monsters and from your allies, and you are allowed to steal initiative by spending inspiration, which I got a few tokens every battle as well that I used and didn't use. Or if you took damage, you could steal the initiative as well and take your turn next. And then once all parties had gone and every creature had acted, the last person chooses who starts off the next round. And it was interesting because it allowed me to pull some levers and be really brutal about, like, you know, if you're going down and like you're making death saves, I can force you to go first or go next and make another death save right away or something. I can make those
cool, yeah.
like that was made going down kind of scary, but also you got to do teamwork. And what I noticed was that you talked to each other about things, and you weren't like waiting for your turn because you're like, well, how do we want to do this? Who's got something to do first?
Yeah, I think, I feel a little bit mixed about it, like pluses and minuses. I do enjoy that kind of stuff, although it is somewhat immersion breaking. I've always found combat to be like, you know, because you take turns, like turns don't happen in real fights or whatever. It's just like everything's happening at once. So for things to be staggered and for like the situation to change between turns is like not at all how things would play out if people were acting simultaneously. So like D&D combat will like never be good in my brain.
The original
no matter
system
what.
doesn't really give itself
Yeah.
well to everything happen simultaneously either.
Right. But then I would actually say that adding this where we can like stop and strategize and be like, oh, you know, let's have you go next so you can do this thing that'll like, you know, maybe make it have like disadvantage on saves, and then you'll do your thing that has a saving check or whatever. I feel like that removes it even further from like how real combat would play out or whatever. So it definitely is like bad in my simulationist brain, but like good for, you know, if combat is going to be super brutal, it is good that we are strategizing more.
Shocking, I have an argument for it, but I would argue that you can, and a lot of people do, play regular combat that way. It's just
true.
that this
It does happen that
this
way.
encouraged it in a way that, like, I think I either see regular combat go like this, where people strategize and be like, I've had regular combats where we're just rolling initiative order, where I'm still like, hey, I'm going to help you even though your turn is next round, so that you can still get advantage even though it's a while away from now. It's not very different than saying, I'm going to give you the advantage and you can go next. Like, it's going to happen anyways. And I don't know. I think this just made sure people were into it.
Also, like, I find with this kind of version of combat, it like is less immersion breaking for me, because I assume that like, our party is used to like working together and like we understand like what each other is like doing. I'm like if my character like looks at like Andrea or like Welltide or Tango and they look like they want to like they're gonna cast a spell that's gonna like do something cool, like I'm aware of their abilities, like I know what they can do, so like I'm gonna be like, no, you do what you're gonna do so that like everybody can benefit from this, because like we're a group, like you can assume that we've been working together for a while.
Even just having like this strategy of like being like as a rogue, you know, going in and knowing that someone's going to cast a fireball in a group, you can be like, cool, give me the turn first. I'll do some damage and then I'll get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Because like that might be a play you guys have. You know, you go in and distract them, you roll out, and while they're chasing you, someone throws a fireball. That's probably
most of the time
that's
I
part of your
roll highest
playbook.
initiative. So most of the time I'm going first anyway. So I just sort of run in there, hit them, and be like, no, go after me, and then I like hand it off to somebody that's going to do something that's going to give them disadvantage, or like, you know.
I like that
to
me it made people less like standees that were just like waiting for their turn to go in a video game. It made it less like a chessboard, which
I'd agree. Like I really liked this initiative system because the combat felt really dynamic, and it might have just been like also in part like our group in the way that like we were all working together, but like I feel like the system really encouraged it. And I'd actually also kind of run a little bit counter to the like immersion breaking point. For me, it actually almost made it like a little bit more immersion-y in the sense that like, as like Brianna was saying, it's just like, our characters would kind of like be working together like this. So even though we're like table talking a little bit of what we're gonna do, it's like, you know, my character would give your character a look like, we're about to do this thing, and then like
Well, we can assume that Kanaima is just yelling at everybody.
And, like to the point of being like, like to the point of like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm waiting, and then now the board state has like changed before I got to that. Like, less of those moments will happen because if like you look like you want to do something, and like someone's like about to go next, you're like, oh no, wait, like you're gonna do a cool thing, so you did that first. So I liked it as well for like, it created a lot of opportunity to like pass the baton of doing a cool thing in the combat as well.
Also, just like I think that the like, you know, every round is 6 seconds, and every action you do is like, you know, every turn you take is like a 6-second turn that's happening simultaneous with everyone else. The way of like having it structured that everyone's going in the same order every round kind of to me breaks that and makes it too mechanical. Whereas like when people are like maybe taking 2 turns that are closer together and then one that's a little further away and stuff, like it kind of makes it more fluid and natural, and to me like how a combat would go, and like how some turns you might take might be faster, and how like in an action movie it might do a bit more on like Kanaima and Welltide doing their thing, and then switch back to like Andri for a bit, and then not get back to Welltide till like late next round, you know? Like that aspect was really cinematic and cool, and less like rigid and like I'm checking off a list or playing on a chessboard. Like
I can see that like, for sure. Because I feel like if you think about it like too strictly, it would be like theoretically everyone constantly acting on 6-second intervals simultaneously. But like this way, I'm thinking, there's like situations where you like stop for a second and you assess the situation, and you're kind of like, okay, Kanaima's got that one, I'm gonna go for that one, or whatever, So if you're acting on the same turn and you're like, oh, I am casting a fireball, I am going to wait for Kanaima to roll out of there. That's what my character would normally do if they were like doing things simultaneously. Like I would just hold it. And you can do that with readying actions in the regular initiative, but this is a lot less complicated. Yeah.
It also doesn't make sense in regular initiative. Like if you roll last and you're like you just rolled really bad, but you're like normally a really like fast character, it doesn't make sense to like pigeonhole that person to constantly going last in the round because they rolled bad at the beginning of the round. Because like, how is their character just consistently always like the last person to go? Like,
for like 10 rounds in a row.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
So this like I find makes more sense. Like, and it fits into like the idea like we have all of these spellcasters and they're rolling burnout. If somebody like has like a bad effect from their like burnout, and then we change up the initiative for the next round, it like fits into the story of like, oh, like something bad happened to me last round, I'm exhausted, like I lost 2 hit points because I fucked up casting this spell, so like I'm gonna go last, like it just makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
I really like that.
So it sounds like it increased your Jace's metagaming feelings, but actually immersed you further into the narrative of the combat, right?
You see, and that's like a big thing for me is I don't think the response to metagaming is like, for me, it's not effective to just try and outlaw it because it's impossible. Like you can't.
You've already got a role-playing excuse that Brianna's definitely identified that, of course, the party talks to each other.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're walking in the desert for your journey? You know, we might have some good role-play moment prompts.
Got a playbook, you know?
You know.
It's like football, you know?
Yeah.
I really like the idea of like our characters just being like, okay, and then when I wave the wand in this position, you get out of the way.
Look at a series like Avatar: The Last Airbender or something like that.
Oh,
though too,
that
because
is the
on their
perfect example for
downtime, they
everything.
literally are practicing. Sometimes together, like sometimes they're doing moves, like and they're
Yes.
practicing dodges and stuff, and like they're practicing different movements and they're practicing different techniques. Like they actually do spend a lot of their downtime practicing their arts, and that might be something that happens, you know, like during your downtime you might throw a few fire bolts at Kanaima that's practicing dodging out of the way, or like, you know, and have a little game about it. And like,
Can we make a scene of that?
yeah.
Yes.
All we have to do is we've identified it as something to do, and we just have to talk about it, right? That's where how it's just incorporating more narrative into your game, and that's kind of what the crux of tonight's discussion has kind of come down to, is injecting more reality because you're getting the juice out of the simulation, enjoying engaging in the world and kind of the consequences of having meaningful choices. And the prompts, role-playing prompts, your short rest role-playing prompts, and your downtime, long rest,
And even like
just getting
initiative
prompted.
role-playing prompts,
Yeah.
right?
Everything
Like this is
is incorporating into this, like, you know, prompting system to prompt you to engage in the role play and the narrative. And that's what I think really kind of came together in this particular stream, and what made it so strong and flowing and cinematic. Going back to initiative, we had the Greyhawk initiative from Dungeons and Dragons Mike Merles, which was another system that tried to incorporate a little bit more narrative into the flow of things, where you were rolling a new initiative like almost every round, or different actions would allow you to go faster.
You basically choose what you wanna do.
Takes a longer time to do all the things than swinging a sword does.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting proposal to incorporate narrative into it, but again, you're rolling every round. You're
I like
metagaming.
less work, not more.
You're metagaming even harder, to Jace's point, because you're every round deciding, well, I'm going to cast a spell this round, so I'm going to be slow, and like trying to math those kinds of things out. So, you know, I think compared to the alternatives, this is one of the highlights, and why it's your favorite thing you wanted to point out.
Yeah. I had something else that's gone.
Oh,
I wanted to bring it back to that like that medium like rest thing that you were talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
I like would love that, like you were talking about, like how the characters in Avatar: Last Airbender, like they practice like with each other. Like if there was like a medium like rest thing, like, you know, I would say that like, yeah, our characters, like you could be like doing that like at like camp, like right before we go to sleep
the
or
making
something,
camp
you
rules
know.
might be really good for that to
And like
incorporate
I feel
in.
like a medium rest could, like, as opposed to like the short rest where you're just like kind of catching your breath before you like set off again, like medium rest being like 8 hours, like we'd have like a RP opportunity, so like one of us could maybe get inspiration or something, like you tell a story, or you like, you know, practice something, you get something out of it.
Definitely try to make more of the making camp
Yeah.
rules, because like we seem to really like it, and sometimes if you don't need to recover, I would brush over making camp a little bit, because it just seemed like a lot to do if you're busy and like haven't taken any damage yet.
Yeah.
So I generally say, I think we only did it like once or twice.
I actually thought that that's what short rests were now. Like I didn't even realize that like we
You're
could
like,
do
oh
a
my
1 hour
god, we
short
could just
rest.
take an hour? Yeah,
Yeah, it's
you
just like,
totally
whoa,
can.
yeah, an hour.
You need an hour.
I just thought short rests
Yeah.
were always like just when we went to sleep at night.
Yeah, we
Oh.
can take a lot.
Yeah.
We didn't take a
short
lot of
rest is like you just finished. We could beat that earth elemental and the dust methods, and we're like sit down with Jin and like catch up and like drink some
Yeah.
water before we set off again. That's a short rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love the idea of like having a short, medium, long, like kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Thing.
There's also one topic we haven't touched on too, and it's kind of the rules around like death, wounds, and dying. So we had a few things come up. Like
Wait.
yeah.
can we talk about medium and long rest more? First,
Well, like I don't think I'll introduce a medium rest to this campaign. What I think I'll do is I'll stick to short rest, and then the make camp is an option to take like an 8-hour short rest, and then also with the role playing elements added, and when Andrew gets these brewer kits, which I might just say we got because we might have just forgot about, and I think Josh might want them for the next adventure, and the Vault can handle it probably.
And I'm
that's
just going to
functionally-
apply an apron that
me-
says "Kiss the Cook."
Nice. To me, it sounds like the medium rest that like Jason and Brianna are looking for functionally is exactly just making a camp rule.
Yeah, I think that's
anyway.
what
So yeah, like I think that's going to be fun to
Especially
like
with
throw more in.
Kanaima's new like lady love joining the party.
Yeah, I'm
you know?
really excited about that. Like, I'm just
thrilled.
gonna.
He's gonna want to cook for everybody, right? Like he needs to woo her, right?
yeah.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be sparks flying.
I was
Yeah.
going to spend the next few long rests becoming a master chef.
Yeah.
Just to woo.
Just,
What- what's
but
Lady
just a
Prince
moon
again?
folk. She just drinks blood, so.
Well, she eats
could drink
normal
your
things
blood.
too.
Oh God!
In, like, a sexy
We're
way.
gonna be
You're
like
gonna
a
cook your
Twilight.
Yeah.
She eats normal food too. She doesn't
Oh,
too.
sick.
Okay.
They need blood once a day in my game.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Kanaima's gonna become the best cook in all the land.
Nice.
Forget those jumping competitions and fight clubs. Kanaima's a new man.
So many.
I'm the Iron
new-
Chef.
Iron
So-
Chef Kanaima.
Yeah.
Anything else about the rest?
Yes. One more thing on the long rest.
Please.
When we were doing our downtime activity for the long rest, it was very like pick your one activity you do this week, and I was like, there's so much more I want to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay, brewing potions will be mine, but I don't need to be like standing over the pot stirring for 7 days.
No, I always
And,
allowed
like,
a couple of minor actions too.
For sure, yeah. And like they don't even need to be mechanical maybe, but I mean like, you know, you're awake for like 16 hours of those 7 days. So like what are you doing? Like I'm probably like hanging out at the bar. I'm probably going and visiting like Andrew to meet Andrew's family or go check on like Welltide in the hospital.
Oh,
You know.
to
We
Andrew's
did all
house.
that. I
We
asked
did that.
you.
I
And
know,
then
I mean,
I
like-
gave you options, and then I said everyone pick 2 small things you want to do, like shopping or meeting a specific person, or like fill in the time. And then I gave you all the scene that was visiting Welltide in the water shrine.
I know. I mean, I guess I like literally even more. That's one of the things about like a long week.
How long do you want this long rest to take in
The
physical
whole
time?
campaign.
We
Well,
spent an hour and a half.
I know.
Week.
Well,
One session is
But, like-
just the longer.
Up all
But
week.
like not even in the sense that like I'm trying to like jam more in. It's more that there is like, it's like that human desire to like fill a space. Like you see a glass of like water or whatever, you're not just going to pour in like one sip or whatever, you're going to fill it. So like
Well,
I
I'm
see
telling you
a
how
whole
big the
7
glass
days
is.
of space in the game and I want to fill that. I could like the visit to Welltide and like the brewing the potions and whatever, like talking to Nana or something like
If
that.
you ever
that
run
could
a
all be in
game-
one day.
If you ever run a game where you make me do every day of my long rest, I will divorce you.
I'm gonna fucking do it.
I would like to remind you all that my husband is constantly only pouring me half a glass of things all the time. So
Why?
Wait,
I don't
why?
know. I'll ask him for a drink and he'll come at me with like a glass that's like this full. I'm like, what the fuck
Do you
is
think he
this?
poured it and then decided he wanted some too, and he like
He
sipped
definitely
it on
does
the way?
that.
Anyways,
Whatever.
I think the thing is that you look at. I think you have this reason of playing D&D, which I do admire. That you're very simulationalist with it, but like I think it's important to think of D&D less like a simulation or like a sim game, and think of it more like an action TV show in episodes. Because sometimes you have episodes where like you need to cut through a week really fast, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm not saying that your characters aren't filling their days with everything, but like that's for you to decide too. And I also am totally willing to like do flashbacks to your long rest to be like, well, is it okay to say that I did this when I was on my long rest? If it's small, I can be like, yeah, we just skipped to key moments. We didn't cover your day-to-day activities.
Yeah.
And that's not special to this game either. That's
No.
I think most DMs purview
Yeah.
for these types of things.
I think that's pretty standard. I'm not filling your glass 1/7 full.
Okay.
It's up to you, Jace,
I know.
to make the most
Fill
of
your
it.
own
Yeah.
glass.
Listen,
Read
I
the
filled.
downtime rules.
I'm giving
I
you a
filled
glass,
the
and you're
glass.
thinking it's a big gulp cup.
I know
Yeah.
what Tangle did for 7 days. I filled the glass in my head, but it's like you want to share all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think realistically, it's like it would be cool to share all of those moments, but then if we all like detailed 7 individual days,
I'd
like,
kill myself.
it would it would have taken way too long to go through. So I think we did have like a really good balance of content. Like I loved the week long rest, and I
Yeah.
loved the way that all of our characters interacted. I felt like it was like really well paced.
Yeah.
Speaking of the glasses, though, I think my husband just drank half of mine.
Oh no.
Way to
Deal
look
with
at
it.
a glass.
Okay, we had some homebrew rules on death and stuff, so I'm going to go through them real quick. We had the bloody condition, so if you were at half hit points or lower, you needed to use healing supplies to recover hit die or recover HP with hit dice on your
we
short
use
rest.
that?
Yep, I made you use healing supplies if anyone's under half. It only happened like
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah, and
we
Andrew was the one to do it.
we did not do a lot of
As it
short
would be
rests.
I didn't even know we were doing that.
So yeah, it was. I always kind of did a little reminder, but we didn't do a lot of short rests. We had wounds, so if you go down, you take a wound, it has to be bandaged, or else it causes exhaustion, and it can reopen on crits. We had death saving throw changes, where you did not get successes, you just got failures, or if you roll a 20, you came back with 1 HP, and the death saving throw fails stayed permanently, and you just recovered 1 every long rest. That was pretty taxing.
We'll see just how taxing it gets even further into the future
I know.
because I think we have a couple death saves just hanging around.
Yep. They're
yeah,
hard to get rid of.
yeah.
We had the dying condition where you're no longer unconscious when you go down, but you can see 10 feet around you and say 2 words.
That was a good one.
And we had fate points too, which meant you could cheat death just once.
That was a bad one, I think. I have thoughts about the fate points.
Cool.
It completely undid everything that was hard about this game because, like,
Yeah.
like all 4 of us literally have a get out of death free card. I really am happy that Welltide's still around because, like, I love the character. I think maybe like 1 starting the party with 1 is maybe reasonable for the whole party.
I actually agree. I was gonna say, like, I like the fate point, but I don't think everyone needs one because then we have all this like spare. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's more on me than anyone. I think like I'm still with combats and with challenges, I'm holding back a bit because I'm worried about killing characters and stuff because that's my nature as a DM. I'm not a TPK kind of person. I don't rack up my character deaths. So I think like because I have I wasn't considering the fate points when I started throwing encounters at everybody and damage and dungeons and stuff. So I think for next season, I'm just going to try and make things a lot more deadlier. And that way they actually get burnt through a little faster and maybe we see someone burn through one and die still after.
Yeah. A worry,
I'm aiming for that more.
a worry there is like, are they...
like you don't want it to be like the party is too strained, or
Well, well, not only that, but also like narratively, I'm worried about like cheapening a death by if like we all have one of those to burn through and then comes the real death or whatever.
Yeah, like
is
everyone
that-
has a
Your
close
metagamer again coming
Yeah.
into play, right?
Yeah. I don't know if everyone has like a fake death and it's like psych fate point or
Let
whatever.
me put it to you this way, Jace. If Tangle was to maybe have a critical moment, what do you think you would want to do? You know, maybe you're happy with the way that things work out for Tangle. Maybe
Yeah.
you don't play that character anymore because you don't want to spend the fate point because narratively that's what you want to choose.
You don't have to. It's
Yeah,
true.
so you don't
Yeah.
actually have
That's
to use
true.
it.
For how we dealt with Welltide's return as Bright Tide, like, we're a whole new character almost. It really fit in a very uniquely thematic way to use that point of fate to sort of say, we're not quite done with this character yet. We still have some space to explore, maybe.
I like that too because I find Dungeons and Dragons very difficult or very lacking in its like personality and narrative aspects, and like all its social gameplay is really light. All its personality gameplay and the inspiration mechanic are very light, and they're not very like this combat is so in depth, but nothing else is. So I like that this kind of lets you opt out and just make new characters if you like, but also like that coming back from death, like we made into a character growth point, and that's something I don't often see in D&D, and I'm always trying to get my characters or my players to do more, is look for how, not just like, don't make a character you love and just sit on them. Make a character you love and then think about how this adventure and campaign is going to change them and who they're going to be at the end of it, or who they could be. And that's really what's happening with Welltide, is we're having someone really morph into something else, and we're going to see how they deal with it and see where they come out.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested, based off of the like end of the last encounter that we had.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's actually going to be some internal turmoil, definitely, for like Bright Tide to like sort of struggle with. So
Yeah.
She killed someone.
Yeah.
and she's a pacifist.
Yeah.
basically.
Killed someone with a
Never.
sword of fire
Yeah,
as a
right.
water bear druid.
my
God.
Right? So
And like that was a crit hit as
Yeah.
well. With that.
Yeah,
it's,
when
like,
we realized the
really
paralysis
skillfully-
thing.
Yeah.
and I think that was one of the spells too. That was the spell too where you like cast it and it just like didn't even cost you a spell slot because it was
Yeah.
just the moment was meant to
Just-
be.
Yeah, it was just too perfect of a hit.
The real life dice gods were working in your favor that whole time. Like,
Yeah.
it was like driving the narrative.
Yeah.
Because
It's
it
beautiful.
really drove it for like the whole party, because like the whole party like knows that like Welltide before becoming Brighttide was like this pacifist that never wanted to fight, and then like we see like her like run in with a flaming sword and fucking kill somebody, and like Tangle's Tangle is just like, oh god, I'm gonna focus on the zombies.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do this.
There is too much to deal with.
This is too uncomfortable.
Well, there's something too, like I can be more brutal with monsters too. I mean, there is like, although a lot of people play, so there's two things I was thinking about first. A lot of dungeon masters are very gracious and don't hit people who are already down. Just how they work. And I usually work that way too. I don't hit people who have gone down. But like monsters can hit you when that you go down, and if they're within 5 feet of you and they get advantage, and if it hits, it's a crit. And if they crit you, that's 2 failed death saves right away. So like monsters can do a lot of shit to you when you're down, and very quickly I can kill people who are down, and maybe with especially aggressive or dire circumstances, I need to start doing that more.
Bunch of hungry wolves.
The second thing too is that like
Depends on the
by
monster, I guess, yeah.
this is one thing I don't see ever, because there is a little rule, but like it's funny, the default technically is that like monsters make death saves too. And like I was reading up on this because I was doing some new character sheet projects, and I was looking at like I was looking at what kind of rules were really core to being a DM, and I saw, and it has a thing where it's like there's a little aside that's like, hey, you might want to not do death saves for all your monsters because it's tedious, and you might want to do it just for special ones. But without that aside, the core rule is that death saves are not just for heroes. Death saves are for every creature in the game. And it's your choice whether you exclude them from monsters or not. For big characters that are very important, I might start using death saves, and if you want them dead, you're going to have to finish the job in cold blood. And like that's a narrative thing I was thinking about too that I wanted to introduce, maybe just for special circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of like our party, we like probably won't want to.
Yeah,
kill
I
people.
mean-
No.
And I kind of like that. Like that's actually one of the things I really liked about this campaign. And I think it's like part of it is the rules, and part of it is like the party and like our like comp. But like everyone kind of went into it like not wanting to be like just traveling murderers.
Yeah.
It wasn't like video gamey and the like, okay, everything needs to be killed. Like, let's
Yeah.
kill
Yeah.
things. We were all
Everything
like,
needs to die.
yeah,
Until
we were so
Welltide
into
got out of
it. Like,
control.
in real life, you don't want to just kill
Yeah.
everybody. That's just, yeah. So,
Not all the time.
no, yeah, sometimes,
Yeah.
you know. But, but yeah, and I kind of like that in a game more. I feel like it drives like a little bit of a better narrative if you're not killing everyone in your wake. And then if you are playing a game where you're doing that, like maybe make that more meaningful and like
Yeah.
there be consequences.
We're a group that I think that likes the idea of consequences and really engaging in that role play aspect. I think if we were doing something more along the lines of just hardcore rules and players not really being as invested in their role playing and their characters and this journey that we're going on, and it was more just a murder hobo party, we'd see fate points getting spent, people dying, new characters coming in. It'd be a whole different kind of approach to playing the game. So the hardcore rules could work totally on that side of the table too, and it'd be a way different game.
That's where setting comes in too, because like, I mean, I don't like using alignment because I think alignment is basically come down to a permission system of what you can kill and what you can't with a clean conscience in D&D. And I don't like that hard and fast label of like, no, this is evil, you should kill it, and this is neutral or good, so you shouldn't. And like, I'd rather you figure that shit out and where your characters sit with that. But I could have set this in like, you know, the first layer of hell and you're all facing demons constantly that are out to kill you and like you need to kill them to survive. I could have set it in a zombie apocalypse. I could have set it in, you know, a land full of undead that you need that constantly are trying to kill you. I could have made this like kind of more intense, and I think that's probably what I would have done, but I'm happy I didn't, I guess.
I am too. I feel like narratively it's like a little bit more interesting when you're not like constantly like everything needs to be murdered all the time. It's a little bit more because you get better, like you get some of these moments where like characters are just trying to live their lives and like
I mean, even if I ran like a crazy demon filled campaign, I'm sure I would have a lot of demons who are just trying to live their lives and made you feel bad. I know my DM style I would not be able to resist.
I don't really like black and white sort of like
alignment sucks
things. And I was gonna say, like, I actually really like what you were saying about like the alignment of like, like we're figuring it out, and you know there isn't just like evil stuff that you can just kill with the clear conscience. Like, I find that like even in playing like other games where that is a thing, like my characters a lot of the time like are kind of like, wait, hold up, like why are we
murdering this thing?
Why are we murdering them?
I've looked at replacing it too, because I think custom alignments for your own setting can do a lot to like flesh out what your setting's about. So like, I don't know, I don't mind lawful versus chaos in this one, but like I think you can do a lot of cool things with setting with alignment that aren't just good or evil and permission to kill things. Like your alignment could literally be like extrovert introvert, you know, like it could be something like personality related like that, and
philosophical
things, right?
Religious influenced, especially for you know what if the water bearer tribe was pretty good about this particular practice, or something that, you know, a typical, say, lawful good paladin would think is abhorrent, but for their particular society, it's normal. You could have like hopeful and nihilist, right? And like there's spells that interact with alignment that like are detect alignment and reverse alignment even, and magic items that do that too. So this is a cool way to still have like maybe certain magic items only bond with people who are actually super hopeful or who are super nihilistic and have given up on shit. And like maybe detecting someone's alignment is good for social stuff because you know where they stand on the issues and what they feel about stuff instead of just good versus evil.
I like the hopeful and nihilist throw out there because it's like Well-Tide hopeful, Andrew nihilist.
And when Well-Tide died, that came into play because like I was like Kanai was hopeful,
like neutral,
and Andrew was like, no, we need to just go. Like he's dead, let's go, let's leave.
Maybe I'll introduce that for our next season.
And I was like immediate denial too.
I was just like, no, can't be dead. There, like something's gonna happen. I started yelling at the bugs that you had spoken to earlier. I started like screaming at everything, like do something.
Oh my god!
I may introduce this for next season. Actually,
I think even Julien said like you actually said that the bugs like went into like the lava or something and then dragged a thing out. So it's like all that actually
the friends you made mattered so much.
I wanted to include this.
So perfect.
One thing that I've been thinking about is when we started this campaign, I was like initially thinking about being a lot more like fast and loose with my playstyle or whatever, because like normally I'm very attached to my characters and like I keep them safe and I make sure they aren't dying, and if they're like getting low, I like hide behind the tank or whatever, you know. And I kind of like meant to do that with this one because it was hard mode. I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna die anyways. I'll like make it exciting and just like whatever plan that it's gonna happen. But then like because we as a play group, or like I don't know if it's like us specifically, but we ended up being so narrative and like having these like wonderful characters and like moving stories, and I was like, oh, now I don't want them to die.
I don't want anyone to die.
So I ended up kind of like going back into my guarded, like, no, I love these characters. Don't let them die.
Protected.
I'm happy to introduce new NPCs too. That I'm like, ooh, maybe like if one of you dies in the next season, you might take over like Tulsha or something and be like a dwarf,
That'd be
or like
sweet.
be a moon folk. And I forget what I named her.
Cave?
No, that
Corinth.
was the name.
Corinth.
Corinth,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe one of you will take over Corinth.
It sounds like Jace came in here looking to do sort of what I was saying earlier about, we're going to roll new characters. It's going to be hard mode.
Yeah.
Whatever. But at the end of the day, what I'm getting from everyone is that it really just facilitated you to get even more into your narrative of your characters.
Yeah.
And the exact opposite of what you think running hard mode should be.
Yep.
All about just rolling up new guys and killing things and dying a lot.
It's changed how I DM forever, for sure. Like, I don't think I'll ever run an easy game, like, again. And I've just realized that, like, a lot of what I was worried, like, I would always be like, oh, if I make it too hard and people die and bad things happen, like, they won't have time to do their narrative story stuff. And, I want to focus on that. But, like, I'm realizing now that making things too easy actually, like, kind of, you're going against yourself. You're not giving good opportunities for cool narrative moments. You're missing a lot of stuff.
People get a lot more careless when things are easy.
And that's the thing,
Yeah.
yeah. That's where you get like a character, like everyone wipes on like an easy campaign because everyone was just super careless.
Let's just
and
go
had, like,
fight a dragon. We're level 3.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Now you're tactical, you're thinking
Yeah.
about supplies, you're thinking about which items you bring and what you do on your downtime, how
What we
you
can
prep
take
for
with
adventure,
us.
how many
Yeah.
spell slots you waste in the battles leading up to the boss, like all that kind of stuff.
Like everything involved, like both the hard mode rules and like all the narrative stuff and like the story and character focus that we're using has completely changed the experience too. Like, a previous weekly game that we did that was like off camera or whatever, like when I look back at it now, it was kind of like show up once a week, roll some dice, maybe some story stuff happens, but it was very like, like compared to this, it's like we're invested in the stories and the characters and like
What's happening next?
Yeah, and because it's hard mode, you're like much more engaged, and I don't know. Yeah, it's like been such a different experience that's like much deeper and better than
gotta
just
say-
like show up and roll dice.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm like so invested in this. I like want to draw a comic book.
Yeah.
I want to make a comic book.
Please,
I would love that.
That's
I would
amazing.
also love
like,
that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like having watched the campaign, like, the narrative journey of these characters is very cinematic and does very much lend itself to the grand epic, like, sort of quests of great characters and whatnot. So, and, the setting in the world, we're drawing on some, like, easily approachable ideas about elements, but it's still really cool and interesting and deep and enough that it's approachable yet deep. I think it's beautiful.
I wanted to keep it very simple as a setting because I don't know, because I thought that would facilitate better story because we only have so much time to go through it. And I think this is for every D&D campaign, not just because we're on a stream. Like, you only have so much time. You can't do 5-hour sessions every time you play or people are going to get worn out. If you can do a 2.5-hour D&D session where everyone leaves wanting more and talking about it, like, I promise you that's so much better than doing a whole day of it. Like,
yeah.
So much more captivating. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like, as players, like, you just even talking about the, like, wanting to do, like, a comic and how, like, the story feels like a grander, like, epic. Like, as a player in the story, like, I'm invested in the same way that I'd be in, like, a show being like, I can't wait for the next episode to come out or the next chapter. And I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next session? And, like, yeah, and even just thinking about, like, okay, what is this going to mean to my character, too? So it's, like, kind of playing a part in writing the story, like, a little bit, but, like, also still consuming it.
Yeah, really letting your players drive a lot of the narrative as well. In even what you're saying about prepping and stuff, if Welltide wasn't the water bearer druid, how much would we have gotten into that side of the narrative in the world in that regard? There's ways that the players contribute to building the world too,
they're
which is
definitely
great.
what like shape what we do and where we go and what we encounter. Like, things would be very different if it was a different set of characters. I know.
And, well, like, fun fact, Well-Tide was completely
random.
randomly
We rolled race, we rolled class, and we rolled subclass. We rolled everything
Stats,
about that.
background,
Rolled
gender.
literally everything.
Everything
Yeah.
was rolled.
Yeah, even quirks, like the fact that Well-Tide has a water bearer tattoo, rolled. Like that became
Yeah, we
part
rolled
of the lore.
tattoo.
Because then it just rolled as
We
like,
just
tattoo.
we decided they
That
had
makes sense.
tattoos.
Yeah.
That's actually an interesting. Yeah, like I mean, that maybe can be our next topic for one of the rules changes we did. Was I don't know if this was in the Darker Dungeons thing that you used.
Yeah,
or if
it was
something
actually.
you came up with. Okay, yeah, but randomizing some of your stuff during character creation. So Julien said if we randomize, so the 3 main categories were race, class, and
Background.
Was it background or was
Yeah.
it stats?
No, it was
No,
background.
stats wasn't like some of us. I chose to roll stats anyway.
Stats was
yeah, I was
optional.
just like,
I don't
I'm
think I
rolling
gave a bonus
everything.
for it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was if you rolled 1, you got 10 extra gold to start with. If you rolled 2, you get an extra skill,
Yep.
and if you rolled 3, you get an extra ability point. And like immediately, I was like, extra shit, like hell yeah, like
You
I'm
rolled 2.
all in. Yeah, the only thing I was like, I really want to be a bird.
Yeah.
I was.
That's the one thing you were.
I had to be an Aarakocra, so I was
Kanaima was
like,
really-
I'm gonna roll.
Kanaima
that.
was set already, so we
Yeah.
didn't roll on Kanaima, which is probably what I would have done too. I'm so
Yeah,
uncomfortable
I'm
rolling.
too much of a like.
I know.
I
You wanna
don't.
control,
I
yeah.
like to
Yeah.
know what's happening,
Well,
what I'm
me
gonna
too.
do. So
Yeah.
Kanaima was like for me. I walked into that and I was like, it's built already.
I'm
know.
pretty sure Josh rolled 2 things as well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
so.
think
Or did he
also
roll all
true.
3?
Josh
He
rolled
race.
He
yeah.
wanted to be a halfling, I know, but I think he
Yeah,
did roll it. And
he
got
picked his
halfling.
race.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? You're right. I think he did roll everything then.
I think no, maybe he
No,
chose
n-
cleric.
maybe he-
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
then
can't
you
remember
rolled
that.
all 3, and like
Yeah.
I also had like no. So like even when we went into it, I didn't even know planning wise. Like I knew the water bears existed, but because you rolled a druid and had the interest in them, like that is why the water bears are druids. Where like I didn't even have that vision of them. I didn't know what they. I just thought they were like kind of monks or something. Or like didn't even think in class terms. I just thought like acolytes or something like that. But because you had the interest, I'm like, oh, this is really great. Yeah, it would be cool if that's where you learned your druid magic and stuff because that's what they teach. And it just worked out surprisingly well. So
Yeah, I actually kind of like love those like moments, like where it's just like, oh, this stuff with the character, and oh, here's my idea to maybe tie it into the world a little bit, and you're like, yeah, that's we're shaping the world a little bit based off of that thing now. Like that was really fun, and that I think that just kind of like really goes to support like your idea of having like a little bit more of like a bare bones thing to let people
Yeah.
build in with it.
to leave some
Yeah.
gaps in your storytelling and your planning, to like leave holes in your lore because you'll fill them in as you play.
And it's incredible how filled in it gets. Like, you know, at character creation, I literally was like, I want to be a bird and that's it. And like, you know, I rolled my class, my background, all sorts of other stuff. And then like the character starts to take shape. And then like by this point, there's like an incredibly defined like personality. We've got family that I didn't plan on ever coming up when I made that character. But like
Tickles mom.
now because of like my fellow players, it's like necessitated like pulling the story in a different direction just because, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing how these characters from like random roles which give you extra stuff, so use these roles player people, and then you can just like flesh them out and make these amazing people. And also he's a pretty big departure from the characters I normally play. Like,
It's a good way to like step out of your comfort zone with like a
Yeah.
character, and
Yeah.
like I had a lot of fun discovering like Well-Tide, and there's still like a lot of creativity like involved in like bringing that character to life. Like I rolled even some of their personality quirks, but like, and you know, like some like events from their past, but I had to flesh out what those
Yeah,
things meant.
how you put them together creates the character.
Yeah, and yeah, it's cool. It's fun because like starting off with like a point like that, you get to grow into your character more and like discover more things about them and like the other characters in your party and like build those relationships. Like, yeah, it's like a lot of the stuff that I find like really fun. I love watching like our characters like grow together and like bond. Like that's always the like stuff I'm like, oh, I can't wait for like more bonding moments for our characters. Yeah.
it's also more interesting for like playing your own character to play something that you're discovering too.
Yeah.
Because like if you create something like, you know, if I created something that's like very me or whatever, or like the kind of things I play in video games or something like that, like I'm going to be playing some like shadowy rogue, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like I do that a lot and I'm not going to be discovering as much because it's like
It's just like
it's
an
in my
avatar.
safe zone, you know. Like it's an avatar of like me in like some like kind of Mary Sue kind of way or whatever, right? And then if you like roll and like randomize it or whatever, like I end up with some person and I have to like jump into that and like discover it's just so much more interesting to explore.
Yeah. I think with Brianna, like Kanaima, I feel like you like to design your characters, but like Kanaima isn't really you either necessarily.
Yeah.
Like
It's my
still,
cat.
It's your actual cat in
It's
real
my
life.
actual
You're still-
cat.
you still have like a basis of inspiration to like
Yeah.
grow around. So it's like everyone at the table has like somebody to discover, and I find that's like
That's
really
how I
cool.
build like a lot of my characters. Is like I base them on like the aspects of like people and like things that I know in my life, and like Kanaima is like very heavily based on my cat. And I like have another character that's like based on another one of my cats. Like it's like I have a lot of cat characters.
That you're just personifying.
Yeah, you know, but they all have like different personalities. Like Oppenheimer's a sweet cat, but for some reason we have identified him as a jerk. Like he's just like a loud, belligerent jerk. It's just going around screaming at everybody for food. But yeah, you know,
Been there.
yeah, same.
I kind of want to know too, because this is kind of a cool segue into our next season too. Like, what kind of things would you be excited as far as like hard mode rules or mods to this game go? What would you be excited to see for season 2 if we made changes? Would you want to see more of something involved? Would you want to see less? We talked about it a little bit already, but is there like one particular thing that you think of or something we haven't done that you might want to introduce?
I really like the skills thing, like the whole like brewer's kit thing.
So get
and
the
stuff.
tools into it a little more?
Yeah. I like the idea of like doing some of that more of that downtime stuff, because like not everything needs to be a like this affects combat or something. Like I like the
Yeah.
idea of like other kinds of rules.
Making the
Yeah.
the camp the short rest with the camp building a little more in depth, making the long rest like very
I have a couple.
Alrighty.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm going to mention again the medium rest that we talked about before, and then I'll drop it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We're gonna work on the short camp rest too. I think that will be
Yeah.
a good medium rest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
You're not getting spell slots during it though.
Yeah, no.
Well,
no
actually-
no spell slot thing.
You have
No, but
5
actually,
slots.
instead of inspiration, it could be like maybe you earn something based
A
on what you
reverse
did or
burnout.
whatever. Reverse burnout.
Like you roll something and it's
You
on
could
the
be-
table.
You can
It
spend
could be
hit
a
dice
hit-
to reverse burnout.
Right, you could get a hit dice, you could get what there could be like all sorts of rewards, or there could
Maybe
be
I'll
punishments or whatever.
So the brewer's kits, if Andrea gets, so we'll get Andrea a brewer's kit before we head out, and the brewing lets you either decide to give everyone a few more HP, or you can give everyone an extra hit die, I think, to play with, and those are the kind of options, or you can create more rations.
Or you can get shit faced and get it hung
I think that's
over.
available with any of the three. So yeah, we might.
Yeah.
So there might be some more positive stuff for short rests in camps if we introduce that.
Yeah, cool. And
Don't worry too much about like getting more spell slots back. And
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that. They're-
You have your
you'll
sorcery
be
points
fine.
too. Now you have
Yeah.
5. I think you're
Yeah.
going to find them a little more flexible.
probably, yeah.
That's like 2 level 1s or a level 2 and a level 1 slot. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one I think is really cool. So the idea I had was rather than gating both gaining new abilities and gaining cool magic items behind like either leveling up or getting them basically at the end of a dungeon or whatever, is having them be like intentionally earnable things. So like you can craft magic items or something like that, or like earn them during a long rest or something like that. Like maybe it's, you're like, I want to upgrade this wand or like bless it or something, and like during your long rest you like go around, it's like, okay, you have to like go find this person in the town and like solve this mystery, or like fight your way into this underground ring and then get this special item that you put on it and it powers it up, or like making, so rather than it just be like a random drop at the end of a dungeon or whatever, making it be things that you like work towards during those downtime things or whatever, and make it be difficult if like
a mastery of some sort.
yeah, exactly.
Like practicing skills, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and then
think you give a little more options into like researching where maybe a magic item that you want might be, and like following leads so that you can like look it up and it's down in your long rest and find out information about where it is, and then go treasure hunting after as part of your adventure.
Like that could be like one of the skills, like mastery skills that you can work on is like treasure hunting and tracking down magic.
Or even upgrading items too,
Or,
and like
yeah.
making non-magic items into magic items, finding the right smiths or people that can do that. I can do that too.
Crafting and stuff in the downtime rules, like a lot of these things you're talking about, like they exist in the existing D&D rule sets, and
They're usually expensive.
Part of it, you know, too, is maybe just like, you know, homebrewing specifically what you're interested in narratively. But a lot of what you're talking about are in some of the either core rules or expanded rules, or there's some like other like pretty good resources out there just to.
We even talked about next long rest, like spending the gold to like find a merchant for magic items and see if we can find something interesting. And although it can be random, like if you want something specific, like I can give you rolls and it might not, like, you know, if you roll badly, maybe it's something similar but not quite as good. Or something be like, yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, and then another one would be in a similar way is like learning new abilities or something like that, or spells. So like rather than like, you know, you beat a boss and then you like took a nap and suddenly you're more powerful and you know a bunch more things, like having your new spells that you earn be again like put into the narrative somehow.
I can just
You're
leave
training
level
them.
ups until long rests.
Yeah, maybe,
And, like,
and then we like
work in
narratively
how-
have a scene where you like learn Fireball from that person.
13th
or
Age has a
whatever,
rule
like-
about that where it makes you, when you level up, tell a story about what you leveled up. Like maybe you were, while you were on that ship voyage, you trained with some old like warrior
that,
on there, and like it, or like, and it can be anything. You can go back to any time before your last level up and be like, you know what, when I was fighting this thing, something clicked, and like you can just like back, kind of like flashback it.
Yeah.
Like, actually, we have a really good example of that in our last episode that I wanted to call out. It's something that Julien did that, like, you know, we were kind of having ideas of like, okay, what happens to Well Tied to survive? And I had this idea of going to like these trials, like flame trials, and then there is like, you know, fire related spells that I like gained, and you know, you actually came up with like the specific trials that happened. Like there's that drill with like a flaming sword and stuff like that, and like running through that. There's a story. Like that's why
I thought of that like 5 seconds before I said it.
you know, I like it's like I could tell that it was like you did it like off the cuff, but it felt so like intentional and planned.
Oh,
but I
as
could
soon as
tell
I
it was
thought
based
about it, I
off
was like,
of like
this is just so
this is
much, so
perfect.
sensible. I didn't even
And-
see it until it was in front of me. And
I loved how like that, like there was like a spark of inspiration between the two of us,
Yeah.
because like you were inspired and you did that, and I was like, oh, I know exactly who that was running the drills.
Yeah.
And like you also knew what I was talking about.
leave blanks, you'll fill them in.
So anyway, like yes, I agree. That is really good.
Thank
and,
you
like,
for your multiple points of things that you want. No, I like that stuff, but feel free to like that's on all of us too, right? Like we work together for that, so we can work on making sure that long rests line up with the level ups, and we talk about it more and stuff.
You can always make narrative choices into what you want to do all the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, like Bright Tide has fire spells now. Like I'm sure John chose those, you know, as a player still, but also kind of specifically because of the narrative too. So
everything I choose is
yeah.
for narrative almost. Yeah. Like
So you could do that too when you get
Yeah.
new spells as Tangle. Be like, what has Tangle learned from his last adventure?
Yeah.
And is there magic spells that line up with what he's learning?
Yeah, I've tried to theme them around, like, you know, I'm not picking stuff that doesn't make sense for him, like necromancy or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I pick, like, wind magic because he's a bird or what, you know. But yeah, I kind of like the idea of narrative also informing
I
it.
think you like sort of the Diablo style thing where you would find a book in the labyrinth and then you could read the book, you know, if you had it at the high enough level, and then you would have learned the spell, and you only really learn the spell or level up the spell by like finding these tomes to like
Yeah.
to work off of. But that's the wizard narrative. As a sorcerer, you need to come up with a different approach.
Yeah, it's like inner fire.
naturally,
Yeah.
Well, there's also some like divination spells you have access to as a divine soul sorcerer, and I think that goes great with like your like stargazing stuff. I think you could find some good use out of that too.
Yeah, I feel like his way of learning spells is probably going to be like being like given knowledge from his ancestors, like through the stars or something like that.
Yeah, they're
like studying a constellation and like
Mufasa.
that. Yeah, pretty much. Like Mufasa is absolutely on my mood board for that character.
It reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the dragon style martial arts. You're learning your new spells from studying your ancient forms in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Though-
yeah, that shit was iconic. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. I have ideas then.
Brianna, what do you want to see more of in the next one as far as rules go, or any changes?
Well, I want to see more romance.
How do
I actually really loved the like romance hook that you already had.
I want that. I want to play that so bad.
That's all it is. You're like, fuck the rules.
Yeah, fuck the
Yeah.
rules. Kanaima just wants to woo this
I don't need to
tall
roll another
vampire
die in my
lady.
life. I can just, as long as
Yeah.
I have this, I'm fine.
Kanaima wants to go meet Tangle's mom and ask her for romantic advice.
Oh my god,
Will-
that is a scene.
Definitely
Yes.
have some.
Oh, good.
She doesn't know shit.
Turns out she's actually like a love
Yeah.
relationship expert.
Yeah,
and
she's
that's
a
why
matchmaker.
Tangle-
She's the millionaire matchmaker.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what Kanaima wants.
Nice.
Is there anything rules-wise you want to see
man,
we get into,
rules-wise.
Ben? I know you're not like...
Oh well, I've been very curious and I've really liked it. I think kind of like what you were saying. It's hard to imagine not wanting to engage in a lot of the rules here, just because they are, sort of conducive to a deeper immersion, which I do like. I absolutely love. So at the very least, I think there's like the initiative system. I can't see not using that from now on all the time,
Oh,
just
I
because
know.
it's so much better.
I could
than
never play
standard
the old...
one.
I know, Brianna, you're
I've
playing
introduced
that
it
with...
into-
you introduced
Yeah.
into your other
Yeah.
campaign, and it's been going good, apparently.
Yeah.
And
I like it.
you just how did you actually run the tracking? Because like I imagine just having like a chart.
So
with
yeah, I just write
the list
everyone's
of the
name
enemy.
down, and then like I just check them off.
Check it
and
off.
once everyone has a check mark, the next round starts, and everybody gets their second check mark.
Beautiful.
Easier to manage.
So
Yeah,
easy.
way
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
Like literally,
Who
it's
hasn't
so
gone
simple.
yet? Whose turn is it? Well, it's
That's
up to
all I
you
know.
whose turn it is, and who hasn't gone yet? Well, two people haven't got the check mark.
Yeah,
yet.
I'm gonna always use that for the rest of my.
Super easy.
And since Julien is a designer and facilitator of D&D things, perhaps we might see a custom the Heroes of Valto's Crossing product to help facilitate our needs as hardcore rules players.
Exactly. I'm very excited for this next season too. I think the one thing I actually want to change that I don't think I've talked about, but is an option, is just an expansion on the inventory rules of getting you to sort out your inventory into bags and belts and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
And the mechanical effect is that like you might have one belt that can hold like 2 or 3 items, like your weapons and maybe a potion. And it's like a free action to grab those and sheath them. But then it's like if something's in your backpack, it's like a full action to go into your backpack to get something.
fun.
So
Like
you
that.
choose before you set out every short rest, like what you're prioritizing kind
I
of.
like that.
That way you're not like, okay, and then in this combat free action, grab a healing potion from the bottom of my back.
Yeah, because maybe you put it back there for some reason, but maybe you have it on you in like a strapped on kind of thing. And
At that point, it's bag of holding magic, right?
Yeah.
So, plus, because you're using inventory slots to work it out, suddenly you don't have just a bunch of slots to sort of Tetris it
Yeah.
together. You have the shape of what kinds of bags you have
Yeah, exactly.
to take into
you
consideration.
might have like a 4-slot bandolier across your chest to hold small things, and then like, a 2-slot weapon belt for 2 swords.
This
and-
painting is too big to fit in my belt pouch.
No.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it's flexible. It allows you on long rest to like switch out your bags for new bags without cost really. Like you can just like kind of decide what your bags are and find them in town and like buy them. But yeah, and like you do your creation too, so you can decide what your like what's what.
I like that actually. Like it'll probably be a little bit challenging, but I like the idea of it. Yeah.
I always kind of imagined like people just drop their bags when combat starts. Like, oh
Yeah.
shit.
Well, that's
Oh
the
yeah,
thing,
it's
too.
like a
You-
toss
Off or
backpack.
whatever.
You definitely can. Like if
Yeah.
you're always allowed to carry more than your load limit, obviously, but it's really bad for your attack rolls and stuff. So, I mean, you're all welcome to like carry lots more, but that's going to force you to drop your bag.
Might
And with
be
these new kind of like bag rules and stuff, you can say, oh, I dropped my backpack. So like, if some monster runs off with it,
Eats
you
your
know
backpack.
exactly what you lost, and it's still on your body. So maybe it's not that bad, or maybe it is.
Much less punishing. I think that's the big thing about like kind of the hand waving of the whole backpack thing in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Is like, well, I probably visually, narratively, realistically, I'm not fighting with my bag full of all my shit. But if I just drop it here, like suddenly we're accounting for that, and there's consequences maybe, and it kind of just becomes a whole thing. But
Yeah.
you just lose your bag full of your extra torch and your rope, and your caltrops and other like BS stuff that maybe you weren't using in the first place, or it's your bag full of all of your treasure that you got from there.
Yeah.
You have all your important healing potions and weapons still, but
What
Like,
if
what
I
if-
put a shield in my backpack like a turtle shell, and I
Yeah.
just keep it on me?
Yeah.
So anything that attacks me from behind,
That's actually
You're
a sweet
technically
idea. I
wearing
like
a
that.
shield.
Yeah, it's little turtle shield.
just walking around like a cat turtle.
I love this. Can I met a cat turtle?
Yeah, aside from the changes, like obviously I want to do more of the short rest camping stuff and make that more narratively cool and keep working on the rest.
Yeah, I think actually just even going off of like having to manage inventory, like
Yeah.
the whole like idea of like hand waving and like bag of holding. I feel like before this campaign, I was just like of the mindset of like, oh, I want to get bags of holding to hold lots of
Yeah.
stuff, just like as a player to like felt like more gamey. But
Yeah.
like with this setting, I'm like, I don't even want like bags of holding to really exist in this setting because it just like makes
Well-
stuff too like it'll like
Be useful, but
It might
But it's
exist,
just-
but
but
as
it
a party,
hand
like
waves,
what do you
yeah.
put in it? And then like when do you lose that, or when is it threatened?
Yeah.
Like it's another lever for me to pull too.
it's actually a magic item that you account for and
Like-
care about.
yeah.
So
And
like
more
I
than
can
the orb
threaten
of
that,
time.
like
Yeah.
if you have a tough choice, maybe it's leave the bag or save this person.
Like I'm sure as like a character I'd be interested in this bag, it'd be cool, but like as a player I'm like I don't need this anymore because
Yeah.
I like having to like manage resources this way, and also having the idea of like you have a home, so like you can keep your
Yeah.
main belongings at your home. You don't have to carry your whole wealth with you. I'm like, yeah, you don't really need the whole like not every campaign needs a bag of holding. It doesn't need to pop up.
It
right
is limited
away.
too. I think in this one the rules state like they have homebrew rules about bags of holding and stuff, and it's like a 12 slot bag, so it's like still not unlimited.
Yeah, it's just like better than
Yeah, it's just like
regular.
less weight that you have to carry around, and again, like I will absolutely threaten it at all times.
That's what you need for the painting. Just one. You can have a bag of holding, and that
It's
could be
for
your
painting.
one painting bag, and
Yeah.
carry
Single
that
painting
load
bag.
out.
We should just get an elephant and like a cart or something.
Yeah.
To carry
An
things
elephant
like that.
and a cart.
Yeah.
Actually, there are horses and carts and other things
Yeah.
in the player's handbook.
Get a donkey.
And we've
Donkey
never
and a cart. Why would any player care about that? Maybe if it mattered a little bit more.
Yeah.
We actually
I've
have
always been interested in that stuff, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't really come up.
No, we
Yeah.
had one campaign with a donkey named Jezebel that carried
Yeah,
the
she was a
cart,
horse.
and she was a horse.
She was a horse,
She was
and
a
she was
horse. Her name
wonderful.
and she was like a primary character.
Oh, I
like
love
everyone,
that.
and whenever anyone missed a game, it was because they were taking care of Jezebel.
Like we, like
so
I
good.
played a campaign where we like got like horses and like steeds. Like I was playing a kobold, like homebrewed like a kobold character, so my steed was a dog. So I was just riding a big
yeah.
mastiff, and then I had a magic item that let me like telepathically like communicate with my dog or something. So it's like I understood my dog as well, and
Nice.
like
That's delightful.
we were
More
basically best
importantly,
friends.
your dog understood you.
Yeah.
Very good.
We understood each other. But like, and that was kind of fun, but like it still was like most of the stuff was like mounts that were just like kind of like hand waved as well. It's just like you used it to get to point A from
Yeah,
point B.
it was a little faster.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm gonna do some mounted combat then next season.
That's something that I would love to see
Yeah.
a little bit more of. That is very rare, I think.
Running
in-
camels across the desert?
Running mounted
yeah.
combats in general. Yeah.
We haven't traveled with mounts at all. We've been hoofing
I
it.
know.
Like,
Well,
Yeah.
mounts don't. That's the thing too. Like, and this is really historically accurate. Mounts don't really increase your speed. They just increase what you can carry and maybe like let you not walk.
Yeah.
But like riding mounts is also exhausting, and also they don't really go faster than humans unless you're like running them. And that then if you were,
You
you need
can't
to
go as
switch
far.
horses every 2 hours. So like that's kind of what some knights would do if there was emergencies. They'd have it set up so they could go like 2 hours and just run a horse down, trade it out for a new one at a
So
town.
there'd be checkpoints, basically.
Yeah, and they like if you needed to, if you were interested in having your knights be able to get somewhere quick, you'd set those up in different villages because otherwise, like a horse cannot run faster than a human for more than an hour or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd basically kill your horse.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So it's the thing too. I think that like I don't often use mounts because they don't actually like the rules wise they have no increase in speed for you unless you're like really running them down.
Yeah.
They're just carrying capacity and flavor.
Well, yeah, that's another reason why I like adding this stuff and making them valuable is so
Saddlebags.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
More stuff I can target. More bags.
More bags.
Yeah, I like the idea of this bag thing. Like, I think I'd be on board with doing this. Like, okay, my backpack does this.
Yeah,
My
and it'd be as
belts
simple
and
as like
stuff.
taking your inventory and like drawing like kind of brackets on the side that encapsulate each one and little arrows or something.
And this also like probably makes it easier for like the success at a cost
Yep.
part of the rules, where it's like, oh,
it's
your
more stuff I can.
your belt comes like loose or
Yeah,
whatever,
I
and
can
like
literally
cut off.
threaten specific things,
Yeah.
Or if like you wake up and you don't have your weapon belt on you because you're like camping or something, but your backpack's beside you, like
that's what
Yeah.
you can grab from.
improvise.
These are the tricks to homebrew. It all just cascades into more and more homebrew, but it's great.
It's less trouble to run than I
almost
thought.
more fun. Yeah.
Woo. I don't know. Unless we have anything else to go on, that's kind of what I had prepped to talk about.
Yeah, I think this was a great discussion. We got to talk a little bit about the campaign. If you want to just go watch it, you can just see kind of what we were talking about. We don't necessarily have to recap it for you. It's all available and slowly but surely will be posted on YouTube. Since we're taking a little season break, I'm going to post weekly on Wednesday nights from now on
I love
YouTube.
it.
If you're watching this, it's because you're live, and then otherwise, you've already watched all of the episodes since the very last one, and I'm saying these things, and it doesn't matter to you at all.
It's very fair.
But, thanks for subscribing to our YouTube channel. We appreciate it.
Yeah, be sure to check it out. It's been a really fun campaign. I think there's a lot of really good, fun moments in it, and I don't know. I learned a lot DMing this campaign. I think we all learned a lot playing in this campaign. You might learn a lot as a player or DM watching this campaign. So check it out.
Definitely.
The real gems were the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
Those are the real
It
homebrew
was.
rules I liked.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in season 2, which I don't know when it's going to happen, but give us a couple months to recuperate and take some time. And
Yeah, follow us on Facebook, and then you can see, more likely, Twitter, Can We Play Tweets,
Yep.
and you'll find out when our next game sessions will be. So tune in. We'll look forward to it.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Can We Play already? It's been awesome. Again, subscribe here for more updates about all the other awesome games that we're hosting right now too. We've got some Stranger Things D&D going on. We've got some Roll for Damage that we're co-hosting. All kinds of awesome things that Ben is helping run. So shout out to Ben. Give us a follow on Twitter if you like. It'll get the most updates. And our YouTube channel is awesome. Come check it out. All right. Well,
Thanks, everyone.
thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.